Živijo, jaz sem Boštjan Ahbar in to je podcast Podrobnosti, epizoda številka 062. Anžetom, bolečina v kolenu, kje si?
Okay, mogu bi reči, Anže, bolečina v kolenu, Tomič. Mislim, da okay. Tako boljš funkcija. Ja, evo me. Bolečina v kolenu je. Je, obstaja.
Okay. Košarka je kriva?
Ja, basket je kriv. Ja. En model, v bistvu, po moje, ki me je s kolenom v koleno. Kako se temu reče?
Nismo znali, što na podcastu rekla, ko je napisal v iTunesih, da posluša ta podcast dveh voditeljev. Oba igrata košarko, en za denar, drug pa za, kaj že rekel, za poškodbe.
Za poškodbe, ja, nekaj tasga. Ja. To
je to, ne?
Odvisno, kjer je kjer. Sem to rekel.
Glavno, drugače si vredno, razen tega.
Ja, sem. Okay. Načeloma zelo v redu.
Okay. Malo spočiti, svež, pripravljen na nove izzive.
Ja. Kar rožica, Boki.
Nekaj te moram vprašati. A zadnjič, ko si ti meni rekel, da bi ti videl mene z pižamcom klicala kao za klic v silje, to je bilo za uno taksi vdajo?
Ja.
A se lahko o tem pogovarjamo?
Ja, mislim, da to bo maja bo od zunaj.
A veš, da mi nisi povedal, zakaj se točno gre in pol. Jaz šele vidim, da je pač ta vdaja obstaja, ker sem videl na netu, da bo pižam skal gor, a veš?
Ja.
Pol sem šele poštekal, to je bilo to.
Ja, Joco je full model, ne, pa je rekel in pol je pižama mene, ker so kao, to bojo slavni, pa jaz.
Čakaj, pa ste me rabila sploh, ali ne?
Ja, dejansko sa pol klicala, sem sva gnila pol vseeno vprašanje, sem ne smem nič izdati, no.
Ne, vem, sem pravim, da pač moja napačno telefonsko se mi je dobro.
Ja, to je to. Te španske cifre, jaz to ne morem slediti, stari. Ne morem slediti.
Sorry. V glavnem, v prejšnji epizodi smo govorili z Boštjanom Videmškom, novinar Dela, ki vedno poroča, oziroma se pogovarjamo z njim o situacijah na kriznih žariščih. Kot vedno z njim nekako resen pogovor, v smislu pač, da se pogovarjamo o temah, o zgodbah, ki so konec koncev resne, ki so prave, ki se dogajajo pred našimi očmi ali pa z našim hrbtom, odvisno, kjer stran se obrneš, ko to poslušaš in to gledaš. Tako da zelo dober pogovor. Mislim, da on bil že tretji, četrtič mogoče kot gosta. Ne?
Ja, mislim, da.
Ja, tako da vedno postreže z zanimivimi debatami in zanimivimi pogovori, zanimivimi novicami, če lahko temu tako rečeš. Je pa tudi izdal knjigo na begu, dajte mogoče to počekirati, tako da to je bil podcast številka 61. Danes pa 62. In sicer pogovor z NBA igralcem in to za spremembo, oziroma da ne boste skozi misliti, da to so slovenski, bivši, sedanji, kakorkoli. J.J. Redick, igralec LA Clippersov, se bo pogovarjal z nami.
Ankoli slišal.
V bistvu eden najboljših šuterjev v ligi NBA, igra za ekipo LA Clippers, ki so ena najboljših ekip v NBA.
Ankoli slišal.
Je pa tip faca, li zaradi tega, ker je on kot prvi aktiven NBA igralec, košarka, kakokoli že, štartil pred kratkim tudi svoj podcast, ki je zelo dobro bil tako na začetku že sprejet in je postal zelo popularen v Ameriki. Se pravi, prvi košarkar, ki ima svoj podcast, aktiven košarkar v NBA, ki ima svoj podcast, ki se pogovarja z igralci, soigralci, govori o stvarih, ki se dogajajo ponovadi novinarjem, navijačem, fanom, pač nedosegljive stvari oziroma nevidene stvari, taki odkriti pogovori, tako da se bomo tudi o tem z njim pogovarjali, o njegovi karieri, v situaciji v Clippersih, kakor bo pač debata nanesla. Tako da sem zelo vesel, da sem se uspel povezati z J.J. Redickom, tudi jaz sem igral proti njemu še v mojem času v NBA, tako da je to bo to in se že veselim tega pogovora, ki je definitivno drugačen, sploh če primerjaš ne vem, prvič, da imamo ameriškega NBA igralca, kar je kulno. Nekako sem vedno vedel, da bo do tega prišlo in zdaj je. Tako da za tiste basket fane, evo, to je to. Anže, povej.
Jaz bom sam tehnikalije povedal, ne? Oziroma admin, kot mi temu rečemo. Valjda podcast najdete na aparatus.si, smo tudi v iTunesih, hvala vsem, da ste tam oceno, tako še kdo najde ta podcast. Sicer smo pa tudi na Twitterju kot na podrobnosti _si, račun, ki ga fura naš sužen strokovnjak in ga zelo dobro fura. Tako da to posledite. Vrhunskega fora. Sicer pa ful hvala vsem, res, ki podpirate celo mrežo Aparatus, ker brez teh sredstev ne bi mogli nabavljati opreme, ki pa pomaga, da je zvok na čim boljši ravni. To pa naredite tako, če hočete, da greste na aparatus.si/podpri. Mislim, da je to cel admin.
Drugače pa prej sem ti pisal iz enega eventa.
A res, iz enega eventa, tako boš to rekel. Okay.
Ja. Preden smo začeli to snemati, sem se od nekoder prišel. Se lahko hvalim s tem.
To ni zahvalce, ni se zahvaliti. Ja.
Kar Švica malo se... Dan sem šel prvič in hkrati seveda, hvala Bogu, da do zadnjič gledati biko borbe v živo.
Ja.
Tu v Sevilji. To je pač del kulture in ko sem že prišel sem Seviljo, sem rekel, to moram iti pogledati, zato ker hočem videti to, kako bi to poimenoval, brutalno katastrofo v živo. Hotel sem to doživeti. In sem dobil to plus tokrat 100 v faco proporcijo.
In hvala, ker si to preko filmčkov delil z mano.
Saj sem full dilemi, naj sploh kaj dam na Instagram, kak video, kaj pa kaj.
Jaz ne bi nič dajal to star. Sam povem. Ja, to je ena od teh tradicij, ki mogoče ni dobro, da je še tradicija.
Ne, jaz to že preden sem šel gledati. Jaz sem še vedno bil prej šokiran, pa še zdaj sem, da smo 2016, pa to še sploh obstaja. To sploh še... Jaz vem, da je to del kulture, del zgodovine, del nekak, ne vem, preteklosti. Mislim, se tudi sedanje še vedno, ampak recimo, ne vem, ker že tam znotraj te arene se dejansko, se mi zdi, da se nekako vrneš par 100 let nazaj, ne vem, ni nekak 2016 isto noter, ne glede na to, da si nekak telefone gor držijo, pa imajo selfie stike, pa ne vem, to ni, in videti to, ne vem, jaz ne morem temu drugače reči kot brutalnost v živo, ko v bistvu enega za drugim, pač tako,
ful je krip.
Enega z drugim ubijajo te bike, ki pridejo noter in na način, kako jih, kako počasi, kako... Čeprav na neki strani ne bom rekel, da razumem, ampak vidim tisto,
zakaj je to nastalo?
Strast do tega, pa ta njihov, ne vem, to obnašanje teh torerosov, kot rečejo oni, in tako naprej, ne vem, ampak videti, ne vem, družino, ki pride tja z otrocimi starimi 5, 6, 7 let, ki tam skozi sploskajo, navijajo, se veselijo, ko bik končno pade in ne more niti več hoditi in ga potem dokončajo še sablo, pred vsemi. Da v bistvu špricne kri in ga potem, ne vem, mrtvega prvežejo na konje in ga potem odpeljajo ven tako drsečega, po tistem pesku. Izjemno brutalno, ne priporočamo gledano.
A to bi dal na IMDb.
Ja. 0,0 od 10.
Ja.
In je to bila taka izkušnja. Potem z enim svojim igralcem sem šel to gledati in sem na koncu rekel, da je bila verjetno najbolj brutalna izkušnja v življenju, kar sem jih videl, tako živo pred sabo. Najbolj brutalna stvar, ki sem jih videl, se mi je odvila pred očmi. Ni lahko gledati. Razumem, tako sem rekel, razumem, da je to del kulture, ampak da od 2016 je to še vedno dovoljeno, sem pa šokiran. Glede na to vse, recimo, ne vem, pravice za živali, pa ne vem, kaj vse se dogaja danes v svetu, ogrožene vrste in tako naprej, da se pa to še vedno dovoli, je pa dokaj šokantno.
Še enkrat, hvala za filmčke.
Jih imam kar neki, tako da. Če hočeš, ti še še kjer ga pošljati. Mislim, da na koncu se bom toliko pogumil pa dal kaj na Instagram, ker hočem dati svoj komentar pa svoje mišljenje o tem. Nekako se mi zdi, da to nekako...
Ja, se ne slabim, moj bog. Noro, da je to res 2.6.
Bom zbral enega takega, ki mogoče ni najbolj brutalen. Če se bo to dalo.
To svetujem.
Ja. Tako da zanimivo. Drugače pa smo vse povedali.
Zdaj smo res vse.
Zdaj pa prešaltimo nazaj na basket, pa na NBA. Nič, Anžet, če to enostavno štarti zadevo. J.J, thanks so much for taking your time. I know this is a very important time of the year for you, obviously just before the playoffs. I know how exciting that is. How you feeling? How you think you've done as a team this season? You think you're ready for the playoffs, which is obviously the most important part of the season, the most important part of the year?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. You know, we always
thank you.
Us fellow podcasters, we have to look out for each other. You know,
True.
There was no way I was going to turn down an invitation. I know we've been talking about it for a month or so. So this is a pleasure for me, and I'm really excited to talk to you. In terms of our team, we're playing really good basketball right now. We've won 10 of 11 games. Blake is back. He missed a large chunk of the season. I think he's going to end up playing in only 35 games. So for us, we've won 53 games. We have one game left in the regular season, and then we start playoffs this weekend. So I like where our team's at. Obviously, if you take a look at the Western Conference, the Warriors and the Spurs are two incredible teams. They've had incredible seasons. And then, of course, Oklahoma City with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook is always a contender. So we definitely have our work cut out for us, and even our work cut out for us just to get past the first round. It's going to be interesting. But like you said, this is the most important time of the year, and it's something that every NBA player looks forward to. I've been fortunate. This is my 10th year, and it'll be my 10th time playing in the playoffs. So I've had a lot of experience and really enjoyed the playoffs.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Like to go into the playoffs every year. I played 6 years in the NBA, and I believe I made the playoffs 4 times. And I know how much of a difference is being there when the playoffs are being played and being at home watching or in vacation or something. It just doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. I know you never had that feeling, and hopefully you never will. But
I'm gonna ask you then. What was that feeling like? Because I've never been on a team where like you've got a week or two left in the regular season, and guys are planning their vacation. But I've heard about that. Have you ever been on a team where 2 weeks out, you're not going to be in the playoffs, and you're already planning your summer vacations?
Yeah, I have. Once when I got traded from the Rockets to the Hornets, we had there was a team that was at that time was in a real rebuild mode, and Baron Davis just got traded for Speedy Claxton at the time from Golden State Warriors. So that was a big change, and there were a lot of injuries, and David West was a rookie that year. I know that he was hurt. He didn't play. So the team was really, really weak, which was, for me, was great at the time. I played a lot, so it was good. But we only had, I think, 18 wins, if I'm not wrong, for the whole season. So we knew way ahead that we're not going to make the playoffs. But honestly, it's not fun. And me personally, I hated it. I hated watching NBA playoffs on TV and not being able to participate. Absolutely hated it. So I don't think, except for the finals, I don't think I ever watched the other games. That's how much I despised it. So it's not a fun feeling. I don't know how other people.
I'm with you, man. Like when I lose, whenever we lose in the playoffs, and I've been fortunate. I've played in the conference finals twice and the NBA finals once. But whenever I lose, man, I stop watching. I'm so bitter about things.
Exactly.
People ask me,
you never even get. Sorry, but you never even get to the point where you'll turn on the TV. It's just like you just won't. Like it just stops at that point.
I'll watch like Bravo or HGTV.
I'm the same way. And
it's so funny because I've kind of carved out a little niche for myself. So like all these radio shows, podcasts, television shows, they want me to come on and provide analysis of these games. And I'm like, I can't do it. I haven't watched them. Like, you guys don't understand. Like, I want to distance myself now. You need to decompress.
Yeah. And all of my friends, they would call me up. Oh, did you see the game last night? That game was crazy. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but I cannot even talk to you right now because I have no idea what happened. Like, I'll check the score, but that's it, So except for the finals, like I remember that I really struggled watching games. I enjoy it way more now that I'm not part of the NBA. Like I watched, for example, this year I watched a lot more NBA than I did in the previous years. I also have more time this year. But for a long time it was tough to watch other players, other teams play, because for me you're constantly thinking, what would you do in certain situations? And that's just, sometimes it's just too much, I just can't avoid it. I think it's like a problem. I think any job you do and then you try to watch, those people work, I think you automatically start thinking like, what would you do in certain situations, whether it's basketball or anything else. So for me, it's very difficult. But JJ, just for the people, especially here in Europe, who watch NBA, who know you on the court, but maybe don't know much about you personally, like, can you just talk about like how did you get started with basketball and why basketball? How did you meet basketball or basketball met you, and how did you grow up playing and to come to NBA in the situation where you are now? Obviously with a lot of hard work, but that's not everything. There's a lot of other things involved also.
Yeah, well, if you go back to my childhood, I was homeschooled up until 5th grade. I'm the middle of 5 kids, and my parents lived what I would like to describe as an alternative lifestyle. So we always lived kind of out in the sticks, so to speak, away from any big cities or towns. And we lived on land. My parents always had a garden. At one point, we had a horse. My older sisters rode horses competitively. So for a while, we actually had a horse that they rode. And then my older sisters, they're twins. They grew, and when they were 13, they were like 6'1". So because they were so tall and they wanted to try basketball, I wanted to do everything that my sisters did. And initially, it was riding horses, and they played softball, so I played baseball. So when they started playing basketball, they were 13, and I was 8 years old, and I started playing. The first team I was ever on, we were 0-15. We were the worst team in the league, and I wasn't very good at all. But there was just an initial liking. Like you know how it is, man. You fall in love with doing something. I think for me, the thing that has kind of helped my growth as a basketball player is I love the process. And by that, I mean, I love being in the gym. I love getting better. I love working on my body. I love conditioning. I love watching film. Like I enjoy doing all those things. I kind of embrace the entire process and understand it's a journey. And I think that's really helped me, not only in basketball, but just in my life.
Yeah, and I think especially when you talk about a guy that is like has, a specialty. For you is shooting, and I've been around whether it was in NBA or in Europe, I've been around great shooters, and I know how much dedication it takes and how much focus it takes to develop something that you can really say that you're in the top of the group of the people in the world that are so good at something they do. When did you? At what point did you develop the shot that you have? Because I mean, I'm not trying to like really say this because I'm talking to you. Like your shot it looks amazing. For example, if I compare you to Kyle Korver, like he's also an unbelievable shooter, but your shot is much more pure than his when you look at the mechanics. Mm-hmm. How did you? I mean, how did you develop the shot you had? Because it's kind of like a textbook shot the way you shoot. It really is.
It's a great question. Thank you. And it's a great question. And I think it's a question I get a lot, whether it's from, basketball writers or from parents who want to teach their children how to shoot. The truth is nobody ever taught me how to shoot. I'm a visual learner. So okay. if I saw someone doing something on television, or if I saw a commentator replay a highlight and they would say, look at the backspin on the ball. And they would show the ball in mid-flight with the backspin. I would say, oh, okay. And I'd go out to my backyard and I'd work on snapping my wrist so that I could get backspin. I had a coach when I was about 12 who said, you need to stop using your left thumb in your shot, and your left hand needs to just be a guide hand. So I said, oh, okay. So for 6 months, I worked on that. And then as I got older and kind of got stronger, I was able to actually shoot a jump shot. It's hard to teach a 9-year-old how to shoot. It's hard to teach a 9-year-old how to shoot because they don't have the leg strength to really shoot a jump shot and to use proper mechanics. So about the time I was 13 or 14, going into my 9th grade of high school is when I really knew that I was like, okay, I can really shoot the ball. I have good form. I have proper mechanics. And then from there, as you know, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you can stop working on it. And I feel like every year I've gotten a little bit better at shooting. And there's so many different nuances with shooting, whether it's coming off a screen or coming off a dribble handoff or out of a pick and roll or in transition. And there's so much involved in terms of footwork and balance and follow through that those are shots that I constantly practice and constantly work on.
I think unless you are actually in the gym when the NBA practices are going on, I don't think people really understand how many reps it takes to like perfect things. I always think that it's like people always know like, okay, basketball players, they work a lot and they work hard. But I think for me it was the biggest change once I came to the NBA and played with the guys in the NBA to see how hard they actually work, on individual skills. And that's maybe something that, in my opinion, European basketball is lacking. I don't know how much you're aware of, the way European basketball is structured and the rules and all that, but it's much more team-oriented basketball, kind of more similar maybe to college basketball than it is to NBA. And I kind of miss that in Europe. I wish not people, but maybe players and coaches in Europe would have a chance to see how much time and how much effort is really put into developing, if we're talking about shots right now, into shooting. But for you, J.J., jumping from college, when obviously played in Duke, which is world known college. I mean, people in Europe, people who watch basketball, they're well aware of what Duke means for a player. For you, jumping into the NBA, what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make, if there was any, from college basketball to the NBA? I think every player has to go through that phase where they have to adjust and have to get better at some point to make it in the NBA. I always said that it was easy to go there. It's easier to get there. It's much harder to stay there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. I had a player development coach. It's funny, we're talking about player development, but just so your listeners in Europe are clear, every NBA team has one or two coaches that are specific to player development. So 2 hours before practice, 4 hours before a game, an hour after practice, 9:00 at night. You can call these guys anytime. They'll meet you at the gym and they'll work with you on whatever you want to work on. And some guys have protocols. The head coach or the GM may say, hey, work on ball handling with this guy, or work on, corner 3-point shooting with this guy. But for the most part, the players drive this. In addition to that, most NBA guys have their own trainers during the off season. So there's somebody that's working on skill development with them. And so for me, I think adjusting from college, where you didn't really have that as much, because the NCAA regulates how much time that a coach can spend with the player.
Right. That's for me, that was always very strange to understand.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
And the rules since I was in school 10 years ago have gotten a little more lax. They're allowed to work with them a little bit more. But it's all regulated and you have to chart everything. So I couldn't call Chris Collins, my assistant coach at Duke, at any time I wanted and say, hey, meet me in the gym. I want to get some shots up. Sometimes I would ask, a soccer player to rebound for me, or one of the walk-ons, so it wasn't as structured. And then I got to the NBA and it's really been one of the reasons I've been able to stick as long as I have, is because I've really embraced that player development side and try to work on my skills as much as possible. My game. I'm not going to wow people with athleticism. So for me, the intelligence, the IQ, studying film, studying tendencies, and then skill development have really been what has set me apart. And then, to your question about the adjustment was very hard. I was a star at Duke. I got to play the whole game. I took whatever shot I wanted, and then my first 2 years, I really didn't play at all. I didn't play any.
You were with Stan Van Gundy, right?
I was with Brian Hill my rookie year, and then Stan's first year in Orlando was my second year, and I actually played less my second year than I did my rookie year. Well,
that's something we got in common. My second year, I was with Jeff Van Gundy, so.
So you know how the Van Gundys are. They're very.
Oh, I know.
Very demanding. They're great people. I love them. And
yes,
I played for Stan for 5 years, and I wouldn't be who I am as a player without having played for Stan, because he taught me so much about team defense, and he taught me about being a professional and about accountability and all that stuff. I mean, I've been fortunate to have a bunch of great coaches, and Stan's certainly one of them.
Yeah, and you made a good point. That's something that I just remembered, like just now when you said it. Like, he taught you a lot about team defense, and the same was for me. I was never a good one-on-one defender. I struggle a lot, coming from Europe and trying to play the 3-position NBA, where the guys are very quick and very athletic, very very physical. Besides, and also the court is I mean, I don't say larger. The 3-point line is further out, so for me there's more space. Yeah, I struggled with that, but having J.Jev coaching me, it helped me a lot to become a really good team defender, which later on in my career, especially with the Nets, I used very well. And one of your assistant coaches, Lawrence Frank, was my head coach in New Jersey, and I know that he respected the way I defended, especially when it comes to team defense and understanding the rules and being in right spots, and that helped me increase my minutes and play well later on in my career.
Did you enjoy playing for Lawrence?
I did. I think Lawrence was great. He was for me. He was the perfect coach at the perfect time, and gave me the opportunity to show what I can do. I used the opportunity, and for the 2+ years that I was there with him in the Nets, was basically first guy coming off the bench for pretty much all the games that I was there, and really enjoyed my time there. So
that's where I remember you from. That was early on in my career, but I can remember you playing for the Nets, and I can even remember you having some great games against us. You played a really productive role for them.
Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed playing for Lawrence. And please tell him I said hello when you have a chance.
Just so you know, Lawrence listens to all of my podcasts. Okay. So when I'm going to tell him tomorrow. No, we might be busy during the during the playoffs, but he usually listens to podcasts. He's a runner, so when he runs on the treadmill, he listens to my podcast. So I'm gonna when you give me the link for this, I'm gonna have him listen to this podcast.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a Duke question, actually.
Sure.
Because I somehow know about the Blue Devils and stuff, right? I'm getting that right, because we don't get NCAA games here, basically. But
except for March Madness or the Final Four.
Yeah, the Final Four. But anything regular season wise, we just it's nobody watches it basically over.
Well, honestly, because NBA took over, NBA became so global. It's NBA is on every step, even in Europe now. Everywhere you look, every store you go to is NBA. So go ahead, Anže.
Yeah. So just because the couple of games I saw of Duke playing, right, the fans there pretty much look insane. For all of the home games. So I'm just wondering what that transition was like. Because I don't know, the Duke games seem awesome with the whole arena basically going insane, right? Yeah. And then you get to the NBA where, not as much.
Right. It's a little different. So Cameron Indoor Stadium is where Duke plays their home games. It's basically a glorified high school gym. I mean, it is really small. And the fans are right on top of you. I want to say officially it's 9,000 people is the capacity, which for a college arena, especially a school of Duke's nature, is very, very small. But unofficially, they pack everyone in there like sardines, and I'm not even sure how many people are in there. And the atmosphere is crazy. The students show up hours before the game. They camp out for the big games. For UNC game, our biggest rival, they're camping out for weeks at a time to get tickets. So it was a very cool experience, and I got to play in front of those fans for 4 years. Even still, when I'm back in North Carolina during the off season and get to walk through Cameron, it brings back just incredible memories. And then you go to the NBA, where I would say a lot of arenas in the NBA, it's more of a social event than it is a sporting event. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because listen, NBA fans are great, and I think NBA fans are very passionate. But there's something to be said for all the amenities that modern sports arenas have. They have a ton of bars. Some arenas have nightclubs. They have restaurants in them. So a lot of people like to go to the arenas and have the full experience, and then come second half, that's when they really stand up and start cheering loud.
Yeah, it's definitely a difference. But I do think that once the playoffs come by, the atmosphere in arenas changes a lot. At least from my experience, it just gets
totally.
Yeah, that's where everybody gets into. I was going to ask before we spoke about Coach Frank. Do you? I know that maybe a couple of years ago there was a shooting coach working with the Clippers, Bob Tate. Is he still?
Yeah,
he's still there.
Yeah, Bob's still here. He pretty much at this point works exclusively with Blake Griffin, but he's spent a little bit of time with a few different guys. Okay. He jokingly tells me he wants to help me work on my shot. So
there's another guy that I please tell him I said hello. But actually, Bob Tate, when I was with the Nets, he was there also working with
Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, he worked with Jason. He helped Jason Kidd. I think he really helped him. Get his shot to shoot better and to have a better percentage. But he also helped me a lot. Just working on little small details that I didn't know that I was making errors about, like leaning back too much and stuff. So Bob he's a pretty cool dude. I have great memories and being with him. He's a different kind of guy, for sure.
He's weird.
Yeah, he is weird. I should say that he is very weird, but I kind of like that. We clicked right away, and he's a good guy. JJ, talk to me. Every athlete, not every athlete, but most athletes, and especially in basketball, it's a contact sport. You go through injuries. What are your experience with injuries, and what do you think is most important once you do get injured to focus on to get back as soon as possible? Like I'm not sure what kind of injuries you went through, but I imagine just like as anybody, you're not completely injury free. I mean, it would be like a miracle if you would be, but hopefully you're going to say that you never had like a big injury that kept you out for a long time.
I've had three injuries in my career. I think some injuries are avoidable and you can prevent certain injuries. And so I think for my philosophy in terms of injury management, it's more about prevention. So I have a degenerative disc in my back. I found that out about 2 weeks before the NBA draft. And so my entire 10-year career has been about, preventing back injuries. And I've only missed one significant amount of time because of my back. And that was in my eighth year, my first year with the Clippers. That year, I also broke my wrist. I got pushed when I was jumping, and I landed on my wrist funny and broke a bone in 3 places and tore a ligament in my wrist. An injury like that, you can't prevent. And then my other injury was another core injury. I tore 2 abdominal muscles my 5th year and missed 17 games because of that. So, I've had 3 injuries, and every time I've had an injury, I feel like because of the advances in medicine and all that, I feel like I've gotten stronger every time I've had an injury. I come back stronger, and you also learn a little bit more every time about prevention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pivotal. That's so important. And knowing how competitive NBA it's really a shame because I've seen it happen to the guys around me that would just get some minutes and would get into the rotation, but then they would get hurt. Wouldn't maybe be as focused as you would want them to be, and another guy would take their spot, and they would never recover to get the minutes back, and that's always a shame. Always a shame to see, to have those situations. When it comes like early on, you said that we fellow podcasters have to take care of each other. How did you? I want to talk about this. How did you get an idea to start a podcast? I thought once I found out, I think I saw it on Twitter. I think I'm not sure, but maybe Voj or Chris Mannix or somebody posted that you're going to make a podcast, and I was so excited that finally an active NBA player is going to have his own podcast. I thought it was awesome. I listened to all your episodes, and
thank you.
I'm a big fan.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Is that something that you always wanted to do, or is that something that you just like it was a spur of a moment, like somebody gave you an idea and you said, let's do it? Like, how did you get into that?
I had never listened to a podcast before.
Wow. Okay.
About 6 or 7 months ago, Adrian Wojnarowski, who is one of the top NBA writers, he works for Yahoo Sports. So Woj was getting this content-driven site from Yahoo called The Vertical. And Woj wanted to have a current player's input on the site. So the initial thought was for me to write a few things and kind of release them at certain times during the season. What is it like to be a player and get traded? And they would release that around the trade deadline. So those type of ideas. However, I didn't really like that idea because it was the same thing as the Players Tribune, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's basically, current athletes, they get, help, an editor, a ghostwriter, and they write these articles. Nothing against it, but it's just, it had been done before. And so their next idea was, well, do you want to host a podcast? And I was like, I know what a podcast is, but I don't listen to them. So I did. My wife was like, you need to listen to Serial. Have you listened to this before?
Of course, yeah.
It's a podcast about murder. I'm like, Chelsea, how is this going to help me? But I listened to Serial, and then I was like, all right, this piqued my interest a little bit. So I started getting into different podcasts, and
what they listen now? Do you listen to anything you have to even time, or is
I dabble a little bit, yeah.
Okay, but mostly like sports podcast, or
I try to stick away from the sports thing.
Okay.
So like one podcast I like is Stuff You Should Know.
Okay, yeah. I listen to that. Yeah,
they kind of tackle a different subject. This week, or not this week, but the episode that I'm currently listening to, they're talking about how dark money works in politics. Very interesting stuff. Yeah. I also listen to one of their podcasts on the science behind caffeine. So it's kind of all over the place, and it kind of keeps me entertained. I do like Serial. I listen to a lot of the NPR stuff, which is very popular here in the States. And then there's another podcast called the Learning Leader podcast, and the gentleman who hosts the podcast, he interviews people that are successful, and it kind of picks their brain a little bit, and that's kind of the format that I like with my podcast. Right now I'm doing mainly basketball players. This week will be my first podcast with a non-basketball player, and eventually I'll branch out, and similar to how you have done, and just interview people from all walks of life and kind of pick their brain.
Yeah, the one thing I enjoy probably the most from doing the podcast is to learn stuff. By actually talking to people that are like from different different areas of what they do. Whether it's a basketball player or anything else they do. For me, the biggest thing is to learn by talking to them. I think that's the coolest thing. That's my biggest motivation to do it.
Yeah, me and Boki are usually the two stupid people when we talk. So, we're the dummies most of the time. So
yeah,
it's funny you talk about your motivation though. Like that's your motivation, and I respect that motivation. I'm still trying to figure out what my motivation is to do this podcast. I mean, I'm doing it weekly, so I've committed to doing 52 episodes. We're somewhere in the double digits. I think we're at episode 11 or 12, so only 40 more to go. But
once I heard that you're going to do it, I thought it was going to be like a monthly thing, because I can't imagine with NBA's schedule to do it. Like you got to be pretty disciplined, with once a week. I mean, we do it once every 2 weeks, and that seems like a lot for us. Just for me, and to do it every week, that would be hard, with all the traveling games.
It's a big commitment. It's a big commitment. I have my my little podcast module that I carry with me on the road if we happen to have a road trip. So we usually try to record towards the end of the week on a Saturday or Sunday, and my podcast comes out early Monday morning.
We do Mondays too, yeah.
It's been fun. And I'm not sure what I want to do post-career, but I am interested in possibly being a broadcaster, doing something in media, and this has been an incredible learning experience. I'm certainly not doing the podcast for any monetary gain or anything like that. Yeah. I'm doing it because it's fun and it's something that interests me, and like you said, man, it's a very cool medium, and it's a newer medium, but it is a very cool medium for content, and a lot of the content out there is really interesting.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is like you have the freedom to talk whatever you want to talk about, whoever you choose to talk about, and the time, whether you talk about for 30 minutes or 40, 50, whatever you talk, but it's so much different than any other medium, because whatever you listen to interviews on the radio, on TV, they're so worried about time, like, okay, we got 3 more minutes, 2 more questions, let's go. With podcasting is like, you can take your time, you let the guest talk to get his point across. And I think it's a completely different thing once you listen to a person that has the time and the freedom to say whatever they really want to say, instead of, listening to watching interviews on TV, which is so different. I think
too, and I'm sure you found this as well with current players. But the interesting thing that I found with the current players that I've had on is I think they're a little more willing to open up to me, because any question that I ask, they're not going to necessarily be offended by. Whereas if a normal, normal person from the media asked them the same question I'd asked them, maybe they get offended, maybe they get a little defensive at the question. But it's fun to have just honest conversations with guys.
Yeah, but that was my last question about podcasting is how did that get accepted among the players and among your teammates? Because it's definitely like something new. Nobody has really done that before, if you think about it. Obviously all the players are very exposed to the media, but you never have a guy that's actually inside the locker room talking to the people that's to the world outside. That's like so much different. Like, how did that get accepted with the guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first of all, I think I have a good reputation around the league, and I also think, based on the way I carry myself, I think my teammates, for the most part, they trust me, and other players trust me. And it's funny because, initially I wasn't sure of the reaction that I was going to get, but I've had players from all over the league tell me they listen to the podcast. I've had players call me or call Woj and say, "Hey, I really want to come on the podcast." I mean, Kyle Lowry, who was on the podcast over All-Star Weekend, me and him were trying to connect the whole time, and that was only because he saw Woj the first day of All-Star Weekend and said, "Hey, I want to be on JJ's podcast." So
awesome.
I think the reception amongst players has been really positive, and obviously, man, I'm trying to tell stories on the podcast. I'm trying to get guys on the podcast that I think lend a very unique and interesting perspective or insight to something they've gone through as an athlete, something that maybe not every athlete has gone through. We had Adam Morrison on recently.
Mm-hmm.
We had Brandon Roy on recently. And both those guys really opened up, and they talked about some things that I think were difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
And really unique stuff. No,
and you said it right. They definitely open up to you more than they would to any journalist, because they see you as a friend. They see you as a friend, a teammate, or whatever. And it's such a difference than talking to anybody else. I think there's a level of trust that is on a completely different level. Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the same way, but my interest in bringing someone on is to make that person look good. I think if someone has an interesting story to tell or an interesting journey that they can lend some perspective to, I want to bring that out. I want to show people, hey, this guy is really awesome, and here's some cool stuff about him. So I think guys get that, and that's why they're willing to open up a little bit.
Right. And so for everybody listening, the Vertical Podcast with J.J. Redick is the podcast that please go check it out. It's I'm not exaggerating when I say this. It's a unique NBA podcast. It really is.
Let me ask you a question. Where do you listen to the podcast? Do you use iTunes or Spotify?
I download it through like a podcasting app. Because I usually listen in the car. I rarely listen to podcasts at home. I got 2 daughters, so you can imagine it's pretty busy around the house. But so when I'm on the road, when I'm in the car driving to practice, from practice, whatever, that's when I listen to the podcast. So I just download it on my phone, turn on Bluetooth in the car, and that's when I listen to it. That's how
I live in LA, so I'm constantly stuck in traffic. So I'm always in my car.
And I wish podcasts
you live
existed.
in LA, you're in your car like 2 hours a day. So.
Yeah. So many times I wish podcasts would be at this level, like when I was still in the NBA, 6-7 years ago. I just listened to music, I guess. And I think it was such a waste of time now that I think about it. Like, just listen to music, because I rarely do listen to music except for maybe like pregame stuff to just kind of like get into the zone, Now JJ, the big topic in the NBA besides, playoffs coming up is Kobe. Obviously him having the last game, I think it's tonight. From your experience playing with him, against him, can you just maybe talk about a little bit, like in your opinion, what Kobe meant to the game of basketball? This is just, I think he's such a special player and such a special moment now that he's retiring. Like, can you talk about this a little bit?
Kobe Bryant is definitely one of the greatest players ever. I don't like to, rank guys necessarily by order, but you could certainly make an argument that Kobe, based on his individual success and his team success, is one of the top 5 to 10 players ever. And I think most people from our generation would agree with me. The thing that always struck me with Kobe was his obsessive pursuit of greatness. And most guys, when they get to the league, it doesn't matter how hard they work or how much they love the game. Like, they have a little success and they lose some of that edge. And Kobe never lost that edge. Even now he still has that edge, 19, 20 years later. So it's really remarkable that someone has been able to sustain that level of effort and work and putting that amount of miles on their body for so long. My greatest Kobe memory is also my worst Kobe memory because I was fortunate enough to play against him in the NBA Finals and had to guard him for a few possessions. But there's something I'll remember the rest of my life. But they beat us 4-1 in that series, and I haven't been back to the finals since. So that's why I say it was the greatest Kobe memory and the worst Kobe memory, because I'm still salty about it.
Right. J.J, one last, maybe a couple more questions. The one thing is, a lot of times I talk to my friends here in Europe or the guys who play in the NBA about the rules in basketball. Is there some rule in basketball that is in NBA that you would like to see maybe changed or adjusted? Because especially European to NBA basketball, there's many differences in rules that I think that change the game a lot, like illegal defense or goaltending. Like in Europe, you're allowed to swipe the ball out on the rim if it's bouncing on the rim. There's more contact allowed than NBA. For example, you can kind of like get away with like maybe grab a jersey here and there or push a guy that's running through the lane and stuff like that. So I always like to bring this up when I talk to basketball players because obviously like we all want to see the game go into the right direction and being as attractive for fans as possible. Is there some NBA rule that maybe you would like to see changed or adjusted?
That's an easy question, and maybe it's because I play with DeAndre, but I want the hack-a-shack rule to be changed. I think it's bad for the game. I think it's bad for fans. The game slows down. It's not entertaining. We have so many rules that are in place to make the game flow in a better way. Let me give you an example. There's a reason that you can only foul 6 times. There's a reason you get penalized if you foul 5 times in a quarter. It's so that you don't foul every time down the quarter, right, every time down the floor. You know what I'm saying? Right. So to me, the reason they do that is so that the game flows better. And I just don't like the rule like it is. I mean, it's not real basketball. You're fouling away from the ball. You're fouling away. It's an intentional flagrant foul. It's not a normal common foul. It's a stupid rule to me.
No, I understand completely, but just to play devil's advocate, like, wouldn't you say like, okay, why does DeAndre and all the guys who really struggle with free throws don't just try to get better? And I'm sure DeAndre is trying to get better, but to change the rule because of 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 5 guys in the league that, because free throw is, and I'm really just trying to play devil's advocate. Like the free throw is such a basic part of basketball. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of like 50-50 on this. I completely understand you, and I know it's very frustrating to play in those situations, and it has to be extremely frustrating to fans. That's a good point you made.
Well, I think I played with Dwight. Who also gets kind of hacked, and I played with DeAndre, and I've seen both guys work tirelessly to improve their free throw shooting, and sometimes those big guys, I don't know if it's the oxygen up there or whatever, they just they can't quite get the free throws down. But to me, you are talking about a small group of guys, but the uptick in how many guys now are getting fouled away from the basketball as a strategy has gone way up over the last 2 years. Yeah. So it is affecting gameplay.
At least maybe it should be to where you can use it a couple times a game, but not like every time.
Right. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Yeah. But the other thing too is like, yes, we would be changing a rule for a small group of guys, but we're also talking about guys that are 7 feet tall. And I mean, not only can these guys walk and chew gum at the same time, they can run and block shots and catch balls out of thin air and dunk the ball. I mean, these are some of the greatest athletes in the world. I don't know why we're subjecting them to this. I don't agree. And to all those, youth fans that may say like, well, you're teaching the wrong lesson. Why wouldn't, we teach kids how to make free throws from a young age? Guess what? There's only one DeAndre Jordan. There's only one Dwight Howard. For all those kids that are trying to shoot free throws growing up, I hate to say it, but you're probably not going to be in the NBA. You're probably not going to be 7 feet with a 40-inch vertical. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, good point. For sure. All right, before we let you go, JJ, with playoffs coming up, does your routine change? Like, do you get locked in? Do you turn off your Twitter? Do you do anything different? Or you just go on as... as you do during the season? Like a lot of players, I know they change up a lot once the players walk by.
That's a good question. It's funny because I've always had an issue with this. A lot of guys do change their routine, but I don't, because I feel like I treat every game like it's an important game. I treat every game like it's a playoff game, and I really do. I prepare for every game so that when I get to the playoffs, I don't have to change anything. There's a lot of talk, even in our locker room. It happens every year. We're gonna do this, or we're gonna do this different. And I'm like, nah, this is what I do all the time. This is how I play. This is how I prepare. I'm not gonna shoot extra shots. I already shoot extra shots. I'm not gonna get my rest. I already get my rest. I'm not gonna eat right. I already eat right. Like it's there's no change for me. And again, man, like that's just a personal thing. I think some guys, approach things differently, and it's not a knock against them, but this is what works for me.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, and I agree with you. Definitely.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just have a Steve Ballmer question. Like, how awesome is it?
So funny. Steve Ballmer's just texting me right now. That's so funny.
Seriously?
I just got a text from him. Yeah.
Look, how awesome is it that he's the owner now? Like, honestly, because he's half the entertainment sometimes. Like he's like my favorite NBA owner at this point.
I think, well, I mean, him and Cuban have a nice little rivalry going for both entertaining owners. Yeah. Steve's great. I think he's definitely the most hands-on owner that I've had in my career. Having said that, he doesn't step over his boundaries. He's very supportive of us. He pops in and out frequently during the season, back and forth between Seattle and LA. But he's incredibly supportive. He's incredibly loyal, it seems like, to his players. And I think he's got a nice vision for, what he wants the Clippers to be in terms of the culture, the brand, the identity. And it's been a year and a half or 2 years now of him owning the team, and we're definitely headed in the right direction. I absolutely love him as an owner.
Yeah, seems that way.
Seems awesome. Yeah.
I had to ask that because I'm a tech writer, actually, and
there you go.
See, he's from that world, so it's just he's every time I see him on TV, I just get.
He's entertaining though. He's entertaining. It's funny because he's got like. I don't know how to describe it, but like there's like the Steve Ballmer that everybody sees. He's very emotional. He's very energized. He's very charged up. But I've been really fortunate to spend some one-on-one time and some alone time with him. And he's a really intelligent, down-to-earth guy. And the perception of him, I think, is not necessarily the complete version of him. We like to put people in a box sometimes, but Steve doesn't fit in a box.
Sure. No, but he seems like he genuinely he's an actual owner. If I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like that seems like a really good fit. That's why I asked, because I just wanted somebody who's there to tell me that's. I'm seeing that right, but he is awesome. Like I'm a Ballmer fan basically. So.
Me too. My contract's up in a year. I'm definitely a Ballmer fan.
JJ, first round, you guys are going to play against Blazers. I have a teammate.
If we still potentially
most probably, right?
Most probably. Dallas, yes.
Could be Dallas. You're right. I have a teammate, Scott Bamford. He played with Damian Lillard in college. He's obviously his big, his friend, and obviously wants him to do well. I told him you guys are going to beat the Blazers, so if you guys play against him, please do. I actually picked you guys to. I think we had a podcast, Anžeta, early in the season when we were picking all our favorites for the NBA championship. I think I chose the Clippers. I believe so.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Yeah. So I know it's a lot to ask, but guys, please don't let me down, guys.
I'll make you look good. I'll make you look good.
I'll definitely be watching, definitely be pulling for you guys. JJ, thank you so much for taking your time just before the playoffs. Man. It means so much. Yeah. Obviously, like I said, all the fans, please check out JJ Redick's The Vertical Podcast. You're on Twitter also, JJ. Where can people?
Yes, I'm at Twitter at JJ Redick, JJREDICK. And for any Instagram users, I'm JJ Redick 4 on Instagram.
Awesome. I'll send you the link if you want to show it to Lawrence Frank once we edit it.
I love it.
Really, thank you so much, man.
No problem.
Hopefully in the future, in a year or two, maybe we can get back on and kind of get this make this talk again, because it was really awesome, and to get somebody to talk so honestly and openly.
Season, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Same to you, man.
All right,
Take care. Bye.
Later, Boki. Bye.
Okay, to je bil pogovor z J.J. Redickom. Zanimiva debata, a ne? Sploh to, da si na koncu Steve Ballmer ti not spravil. To je bilo.
Ja, to je bil moj plan, to je bil moj secret plan cel cajt. To sem čakal v zasedi, da sem lahko na koncu Steva Ballmerja omenil. Ker Steve Ballmer je res kralj, pač on je res tako, to je za videti odblisno.
In prav je rekel J.J. Se mi zdi, on pa Mark Cuban sta res taka dva ownerja, ki ni stopata iz poprečja ostalih, rečem poprečja. No. Veš, ki sta dejansko zraven ekip, ki sta noter upeljana, ki sta, ne vem, vedno navijata zraven. To se mi zdi to zelo pomembno.
Feeling imaš, da je tam model, veš. Tako, res imaš feeling, da je tam. No. Tako da je.
Sigurno.
Mi je bilo pa smešno, da mu je dejansko SMS takrat poslal. To se mi zdi vrhunsko.
Ja. V glavnem, tako sem rekel že v podcastu, dajte počekirati The Vertical Podcast with J.J. Redick. Najdete ga na iTunes, ne vem, kjerkoli na netu, ne vem, Google tipkite, se najde z lahkoto. Zelo kvaliteten podcast. Sploh tiste, ki ste košarkarski navdušenci, se res plača poslušati. Tako da počekirite to. Drugač pa že, admin.
Valjda, ta podcast je na del mreže Aparatus, ki jo najdete na aparatus.si. Podrobnosti so tudi v iTunesih, dajte tam kakšno oceno, to vedno pomaga. Predvsem pa pomaga podpora, to naredite tako, da greste na aparatus.si/podpri. Vse, kar dobimo, dajemo v tehniko in serverje in ostalo. Tako da res dejansko ful hvala. Iz moje strani, tako kot zmeram rečem, pa Bokijem pol tudi to rekel. Pa seveda ne pozabimo služne strokovnjaka, Afna, podrobnosti počrtaj si, ker je pač kralj, ki je upravlja naš Twitter account.
Dela, neumorno dela.
Neumorno, more.
Tudi če se ne javlja konstantno, verjemte, on je tam.
On je tam, nima sonca, ampak je tam. Tako da to šteje.
Kak nas bo sem se pretožil, boš videl. V glavnem, še v mojem imenu ful hvala, tako kot je Anže povedal. In če sem @Bokijem na Twitterju, Anže.
Jaz sem Afna Anžeta.
In to je to, ne?
Ja, več ali manj.
Do naslednjič.
Reče dio.
Srečno.
Čau.
Čau.